Samurai Champloo, the second anime directed by Shinichiro?
Yes.
Shinichiro Watanabe, most famous for Cowboy Bebop, and also directed Space Dandy, which we covered last year.
Yeah, Bebop, Champloo, and Dandy are kind of in this trilogy.
It's like his own Blood Cornetto trilogy.
Yeah, pretty much. Even though he did a show in between Champloo and Dandy that's like completely unrelated.
Is that
It's a
Kids on
good
the
show.
Slope?
Yeah. And then he did Terror and Resonance last year. But yeah, these three shows are like sibling shows.
Yeah, they're totally different, but they still have some sort of very subtle tone going on.
Yeah.
You know?
And Champloo is the biggest outlier because, as we said with Space Dandy, it's kind of a riff on Cowboy Bebop. I think Nina described it to me as Space Dandy is the Gurren Lagann to Cowboy Bebop's Evangelion, but done by the same guy who made the first one.
That's a fair assessment. And then Champloo is just samurai rap music.
Yeah.
Hell yeah!
Yeah, predates the Afro Samurai anime.
Yeah.
Which I would
is
also like to
great.
talk about.
Yes.
Definitely.
So good.
I mean, they're all part of that same family. I mean, that delicious peanut butter and jelly combination of hip-hop culture and Far East martial arts shit.
You know what's something that's
squishing
really
together.
interesting that I was thinking about today?
What?
Japanese does not really have rhymes. The way that the language is delineated, it's delineated as far down as to syllables as opposed to consonant and vowel sounds like a lot of Western languages. So the concept of rhymes is not a native concept to them. I've got a friend who studied abroad in Japan. Like, she had to explain the concept from whole cloth to a lot of people. That's why, if you hear Japanese songs, they don't rhyme, except by accident maybe sometimes.
Yeah, but
So
the language itself is already kind of rhythmic because you got so many syllables that
Yeah.
they gotta line up.
You kind of got to push the language in order to make hip-hop out of it, because if it doesn't rhyme, it's not hip-hop.
Yeah, but it's not that hard. I mean...
Yeah, I mean, there was a song at the end of the season 1...
I mean, pretty much all their words end in vowel sounds, so, like...
Yeah.
That's easy.
Yeah, but it's a concept that they got to wrap their mind around. But again, if you are a fan of hip hop, I think you'll pick it up. Like the song "Fly," which was played as the credits theme for episode, I believe 17. It was the one with it was the season 1 finale. The chorus does rhyme.
Yeah.
I listened to it a couple of times to make sure. So I just think it's interesting because it's. The concept of rhyming and Japanese do not inherently mesh, at least from a cultural standpoint. So it's cool that they're able to bring that out.
Yeah. I mean, I just find it wonderful that, we have all these mixed hip-hop and Eastern martial arts things. Like, for whatever reason, it goes together really well, and it's such a beautiful combination. I mean, we got this, we've got Afro Samurai, Ghost Dog, Wu-Tang.
Every
Wu-Tang.
goddamn song Wu-Tang has made.
Shaolin.
Yeah, they just renamed Staten Island to Shaolin.
I know, you texted me that one time and I was like,
Yes,
what?
Are you in Shaolin right now? And you're like, are you... Anyway.
Are you on drugs right now? Like, what? Anyway.
Although, like, some people, like, because I know some people who, like, either like anime or they like kung fu stuff and stuff, but, like, they never, anytime the hip-hop stuff inevitably comes up in, like, a kung fu type thing, they're always like, oh, I don't get it, like, this doesn't match at all, like, I hate it, and I'm like, why do you dislike objectively great things? And I stop talking to them.
I know, you just have to, you think about it and you're like, what? That doesn't make sense, but then you watch it unfold and you're like, this is perfect. It's beautiful.
I think Samurai Champloo was like my first taste of it. It was like the first time I'd really seen it, but like watching it, I was like, this is cool. I think I was too young to even realize, to have any preconceived notions of what does and doesn't go together in terms of like genre and music. But then like I talked to some rando in high school who I was like, this kid kind of likes anime. I'll talk to him about it. And he was like, oh, I don't like it because of the rap music. And he just left, and I was like, oh, you're terrible. Get out of my sight.
See, the first time I watched it, I wasn't even kind of fully cognizant of the hip hop influence because it just fits so naturally.
Yeah, like I didn't even think about it
because I've
the
always
rap
liked
that
rap
I
music.
grew up with was garbage. So to me, I didn't even recognize it as rap. I just thought it was good music.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, like being in high school in the mid 2000s, especially in Florida, it was a bad time for hip hop.
Oh god.
And I mean, there was good stuff going on, but it wasn't permeating our circles. Like Kanye was doing shit then. My dark twisted per fantasy. I don't know the name of that.
Dark twisted fuckface.
That came out in my junior year or senior, something. But yeah. So like Nina and I at least haven't had an appreciation of hip hop until pretty recently, and now I love it.
No, it's Nikki's favorite.
This is pretty great.
I'm trying to find the exact explanation for the title.
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask because I don't know what the hell CHAMPLOO means.
I mean, growing up with stuff
it's...
like that and Fully Cully, I just take it. I don't even question it anymore. I'm like, you want to call your show that? All right, fine.
But yeah, the word CHAMPLOO comes from the Okinawan word champuru, as in Goya champuru, which is a stir-fry dish that contains their native bitter melon. And alone, it just means to mix or to hash. So it's like samurai remix or samurai.
Oh, it makes sense.
That's actually sweet as hell.
And
that's really
sweet.
rad.
And at least internally, it isn't Mugen's sword style known as Champuru Kenjutsu?
Yeah, like that's apparently what he calls it, even though he never actually says it in the show. But that's like what they called it when they were writing the show. And yeah, and it's essentially like his sword style is just all over the place. So it's just
he break dances.
It's made up. He's made up. His
he
entire existence.
Yeah, I didn't catch that the first time around either, but like, wait a minute, nobody else dresses like this dick.
Well, they're like they tried to combine like the baggy hip hop style with like traditional like Edo period clothing.
Just made like a scruffy homeless man.
And like he's
a pirate.
He's the only person in this show wearing gaita. Is that were they not like around at this time?
No, other people were wearing it. I guess it's just not as.
If you don't know, those are those platform sandals.
Yeah,
like Samurai Jack had.
You didn't notice because no one else was literally kicking people in the face and like flinging their leg all the way up in the air wearing them. But
doing
yeah, they were
freaking
like
head spins.
Not with metal.
Yeah,
on the bottom.
I figured that was like a clever spin that he put on it.
Yeah,
it's not real, but like it's a good idea.
Yep.
What is this show actually about?
Well, that's a really good question, actually, because I'm not quite sure what the
basic premise is that
yeah.
it's three peoples, a Ronin samurai, a vagrant sword fighter, and a 15-year-old orphan girl, traveling together looking for, quote, the samurai who smells of sunflowers. The girl, Fu, is the one looking for him, and the other two owe her for her saving their lives. And it's basically it's a pretty episodic journey of them traveling across a really lenient take on Edo period Japan, trying to find.
There's like a
guy.
Disclaimer at the beginning that's just like none of it. We made all this up.
It's interesting.
It's not all made up, though.
Yeah, in doing my research, a lot of it is accurate. It's just that they jumbled around the order of when things became. Like,
this show takes place in like 150 smashed together years.
Kind of. Like,
yeah.
It's a bunch of different years smashed,
decades,
centuries smashed together.
In an ancient Japan where beatboxing exists, and they hold their swords like microphones that they don't know exist, when they don't yet. It's just like, this just feels right to do.
The one guy who has a revolver, and
which he shouldn't have.
The presence of the revolver throws a lot of stuff into question. He holds it sideways, and I'm like, there we go.
Of course. The only like important historical thing that you need to know, I guess, is that this is before Perry's black ships arrived in Japan. So it's Japan on like the cusp of like these changes that are going to be coming very soon with the Meiji era and all that stuff of like being connected to the outside world, which is kind of interesting place to set it, considering he's taking all these Western influences and just sort of shoving it all together and setting it in a time period before Japan had really much contact with anybody other than China and Holland. So
it is interesting because like they do, because whenever when Westerners are in this show, and it's always like major plot points within the episode of like these foreigners coming in and pulling a bunch of shit. So it's interesting that the show
ruining everything.
The fucking baseball episode.
Well, not the first. Baseball. The Dutch guy was all right. He was an all right dude.
Oh no, he was an all right.
The Americans were a bunch of blue-eyed devils.
Yep, they're literally.
Yeah, I fucking love that episode.
Yankee Doodle.
But yeah, it's the cusp of great change, and it's sort of like epitomized by the characters themselves, where you have Mugen, our crazy guy with the Geta shoes and the clothes that don't exist, who sort of represents like this, I guess, the future of Japan, which is this mix of all this different stuff. And then you have Jin, which is our very traditional, very stoic Ronin samurai. Ronin is a samurai without a lord to serve, so he's just looking for a job. Who's very, like, traditional and keeps with the old ways, and it's kind of neat to see the contrast between the two.
He's got some nice specs, though.
Yeah. Yeah, which are also totally anachronistic. Even though other people have glasses and they're more era accurate, but his aren't.
They have like the ties over the ears, like it's just connected to their face with string.
Yeah. And then there's just Fu, who's just in the middle of everything. But she's kind of the one leading the show somehow, so.
She has a pet flying squirrel.
Yeah, Momo, which is short for Momonga, which is essentially just flying squirrel in Japanese.
Oh, that's where El Monga comes from.
Momonga, yeah. Because Momo is just Peach on its own.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, so she named it Flying Squirrel.
Yeah, but it's like, it's kind of a pun.
It's a pun like every name in Japanese.
It's a pun like, basically, every word in the Japanese language is a pun on another word. It just cut it in half, just match them up.
How do we...
That's how it works.
Talk about this show,
Puns.
because it's really all over the place. Like, the three characters are really the only characters that appear that often. There are other characters. There are two
other recurring characters.
Yeah,
the announcer guy from the baseball episode and the eating contest episode, and Monzo the Saw, who I looked up is a reference to a series of Japanese films, Hanzo the Razor.
Yeah, which are apparently like kind of bordering on exploitation films. Hence the joke about his exercise.
Yeah, his
baton that makes it look like he's jerking off.
It's a crazy dildo. Also, for the sake of setting, this takes place after the Shimabara Rebellion, which is something to do with Catholic Christians in Japan, which does become an important thing later in the series.
Yeah. There's actually a lot of history, and like you read into it, and I'm like, okay. It's a little much, but you don't have to know everything. You can just kind of roll with it. That's part of the fun. And we all watched it in the dub that Funimation put out. Actually, the dub is the Genuine Entertainment dub, and then
distributed by Funimation.
Funimation rescued the show after Genuine ceased production of its titles. So yeah, we watched the dub because it's really neat because you could watch. I mean, you can always watch either or, but with this show in particular, it really works because it is just such a blend of like East meets West. So even though they're like in Japan and everyone's speaking English, it doesn't seem weird because again, people are like randomly beatboxing and
rapping about some kind of mountain monster.
Yep.
Yeah, like all this stuff. And it's a pretty good dub. I quite enjoy it. I've actually never listened to it in the Japanese because I'm just so used to the dub, and
I was kind of hoping one of you would watch the sub so we could have some sort of discussion about the differences. I literally was just like, you know what? I haven't seen the show in a while, and I feel like hearing some good old-fashioned, like, Steve Bloom and prime Steve Bloom time. So that's why I did it. I didn't give a fuck about all those other reasons you just said.
Yeah, I was curious about it, so I listened to a little bit. And I don't know, it was pretty regular, I guess, dub. I mean, Mugen's voice was really good, and it's kind of interesting to hear it in the Japanese because one thing about his character that's important is that he's not actually from mainland Japan. He's from the Ryukyu Islands, which at the time weren't technically considered part of the country. They were like in this weird in-between space, kind of being jostled between China and Japan.
Yeah.
So the way that which nowadays the Ryukyu Islands is like Okinawa and the surrounding islands, so they kind of gave him that specific accent to sort of distinguish him.
Well,
But
doesn't he speak like a Yankee?
Yeah.
But I guess it's more speech pattern than accent.
Yeah, that's a speech pattern. He's like a punk.
Yeah.
And like Okinawa's also known for having a lot of like Yankee culture in it too. I guess like by the nature of it being this sort of having this like tumultuous history and having a lot of disenfranchised youth. The best part is in the episodes where people are speaking English. Like I saw a bit of the baseball episode in Japanese, and that was wonderful. I highly suggest it. Yeah, when they had apparently they actually had real native Dutch speakers come in for the scene with our Dutchman friend, so I mean it's good. It's good dub. I mean it works fine. I don't know. I'm just really used to the English dub, so I just kind of stick with it. But I might, this is my 4th time watching the show, so you think I would have watched it in Japanese at some point.
Just to change it up.
But, maybe next time.
Yeah, because, the thing is, especially if you're busy, if it's something you've watched 3 times already, you can put on the dub and multitask.
Yeah,
you can't multitask with the sub.
I literally watched this entire show and played through, the entire second half of Steven Universe Attack the Light and finished it. Or finished them roughly around the same time. So, yeah, that was good. The dub was good for me.
Yeah. So with the dub, Mugen is played by the wonderful Steve Bloom.
Who had previously worked in a Watanabe anime, voicing the main character in Cowboy Bebop, Spike Spiegel.
Yeah, and
comparable, but not super similar characters.
Yeah, it's interesting. The characters themselves they're not really alike that much, even though they have the exact same voice, but, Steve Bloom...
Similar bedhead.
Yeah, similar hair. But Steve Bloom delivers them pretty differently, I would say.
Yeah, Spike is a lot smoother.
Yeah.
Mugen's
Mugen is outright an asshole.
There's there's 0 things appealing about Mugen, and anytime a woman is legitimately attracted to him, I'm just like, why?
He's handsome.
He's fun.
He's got a pube face.
I like Mugen. I love watching him just do his thing. I
love him. I wouldn't touch him intimately.
Well, don't you? He secretly has all this pain inside, and only you can heal it with your understanding. Jin is played by Kirk Thornton.
I'm looking him up because the name doesn't stand out as much. He was the Gabumon family in Digimon Adventure.
Oh.
I feel like I've heard his name a lot.
And Mummymon.
Oh, yeah. Wow. It's a bit of range on him.
No, I mean he's been in a lot of anime. I'm trying to remember anything in particular that I liked that he did, but he's been in a lot of stuff. But yeah, no, he gets around in anime. He was also in the Rurouni Kenshin dub.
Oh, well, wait, which one? Rurouni Kenshin or Samurai X?
It says Rurouni Kenshin.
Okay, that was probably
the good one.
And he was in both dubs of Cagliostro playing different people. In one he was Gustav, and the other he was the Count.
Oh, and he was in the Paranoia Agent dub. That's a good dub. I know, he's a talented guy.
Oh,
he's gotten
Nina,
around.
he's Jubei.
He's Jubei!
From Blaze Blue.
Oh, Blaze Blue.
One of the best characters in that whack-ass game.
Yep. And then Fu is played by Carrie Walgren, who I've heard many times. She was Haruko in Fubikuli. She was in Wolf's Rain. She was also in Paranoia Agent. Just a million things. Like, she's, again, a very prolific, talented voice actress who's been around in the anime dubbing scene for a little while. And you've probably heard her voice before if you watch the animes.
You actually mentioned Wolf's Rain twice now, and I think, isn't there a bit of history with this in Wolf's Rain?
Yes, so the crew of the crew of Cowboy Bebop kind of split up a little bit after that show, and part of them came to work on Samurai Champloo, and the other half worked on Wolf's Rain. I guess Samurai Champloo is mostly the director and, maybe a few other people. And Wolf's Rain had a lot of the writers and I believe the same composer. I'm not sure. I haven't watched Wolf's Rain yet, even though I really need to.
Yeah,
Likewise.
I haven't seen it either. Oh, none of us have seen it?
Have I told this story before on the show that the only episode the only episode I saw was accidentally the very last one, and I watched it to completion?
Oh my god. Yeah, the Yoko Kanno also did the soundtrack for Wolf's Rain. So yeah, it was pretty much kind of a split of the difference. So on the one hand, you have Samurai Champloo, which is a very stylized show. Like, it's pretty style over anything else. There's a little bit of substance, but it's mostly just character-driven things. There's not, a lot of philosophy going on.
Yeah.
Whereas Wolf's Rain, the entire thing is a fucking allegory. Like, the whole damn show. And a lot of people say the opposite about it, that it's all substance, but very little style. Whereas Cowboy Bebop was sort of that perfect blend of the two.
I would say all the substance is in the style. If that makes any sense.
So, yeah, I think it'll be really interesting for us to watch Wolf's Rains later. All of us will be watching it for the first time, essentially, Tooch.
I can't wait to cry about dogs.
Yeah.
Oh god, me too. Oh jeez. That's kind of why I've been putting it off, because I know it's such a heavy show.
Yeah.
And I just haven't been in that place.
From what I saw, he gets pretty heavy.
It's like the polar opposite of this show in every regard.
I don't know. The last 3 episodes of this show are pretty heavy. I like.
Yeah,
They
were heavy and
it was tense.
My understanding of Wolf's Rain is that obviously you care about the characters, but there's a lot of these greater metaphors and philosophical arguments going on with it, whereas with Samurai Champloo, it gets heavy at the end, but that's because it's just these character pieces, and you just really want them to find whatever they're looking for.
And there's good character pieces in not every, that's definitely not true, in several episodes.
Yeah.
Mostly the 2-parters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so.
My experience with this was actually the opposite of Wolf's Rain, because I never actually saw the final episodes. In fact, I might have just completely and utterly missed the 3-part finale. So this was my first time watching it. Up until this point, man. I just I didn't even know if it in fact ended. I thought I was wondering if it was one of those shows that just the ending wasn't the point, so it just sort of stopped. But no, this has an ending. And it was insane.
Because if I'm not mistaken, Tooch, you've never sat down and watched this. Is this something you caught on Adult Swim?
Oh yeah, this was in my early days of staying up way too late on a school night.
Yeah.
That life.
And it's a good show for that, because, there's absolutely continuity and there's chapters to it, effectively, but it's really episodic.
Yeah, I would say you can mostly, if you accidentally watched it out of order with the except for the final 3 episodes and the first episode, this is whatever.
Yeah,
it really doesn't matter that much.
I accidentally skipped the one with the European and didn't realize that until the clip episode, and then went back and saw it. And it's like, yeah, we got to get to Nagasaki, and I'm like, I guess we've always been going to Nagasaki.
I don't know Japanese geography.
Can't keep all these city names in my damn head. Whatever.
What is Edo now? Who even knows? I bet a lot of people actually know what Edo is now.
It's Tokyo. It's Tokyo, Nikki. Edo at the time wasn't the capital. Kyoto still was. it was when the Meiji Restoration they moved it to Edo and changed the name to Tokyo.
Yeah, so so you got the standard, wandering martial artist thing of, some person with a dark past traveling around, righting wrongs as they come across it and never sticking around. Although here it's not so much out of first here it's now 3 people who barely like each other. So that's
I know.
And then
I love it.
They're always doing these favors, usually not out of a sense of justice or whatever this typical thing is, but because they're hungry as fuck.
Or they just kind of
horny.
fall into it. They tend to just fall into doing good things. Because they're all kind of jerks, but they're also not complete assholes at the same time.
Yeah.
Even Mugen, as rough and scraggy as he is, he's not, the worst.
He has some sense of really, really rudimentary basic decency.
Well, I feel like he does kind of change a little bit over time to sort of sympathize with other people who face injustice, because, in the 2-parter with Okuro, he just fucking decides to side with him at the end and just starts killing all these other guys with him and stuff.
Although I did notice that, he never gets lethal with anybody he doesn't think can put up a fight. If it's just, because he always fucks with random street thugs, but he rarely pulls his sword out for them.
He just kicks them a bunch.
Yeah, he just breakdances at them.
He just uses Sheik's down smash on them.
But yeah, I feel like over time, he gets to be a little bit more compassionate in a way, in his own way.
Relatively speaking,
he's never gonna be this saint person. That's just not where he comes from. It's not how he's managed to live as long as he has. But
he's always gonna be a shithead. But depending on who you are, he might not be a shithead to you.
Yeah.
And I think in a similar sense, Gene loosened up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my favorite Gene line was when all 3 of them give the most awkward bonsai ever. And Jin's just but he doesn't break Jin character, just bonsai. Arms up in the air, he's on the worst roller coaster.
I love it from the first episode where Jin was was that a dream? Were you really in the bathtub with your thing hanging out? And he was that was a dream. So very deadpan. Or the scene with the guy in the hot springs.
He's
time to go.
Yeah, it's the fireflies use their signals to attract for each other, but sometimes the males will attract the males. Ho wink, and Jim's just all right, man, happy trails.
I'm gonna get out of here.
And then when Jin cross-dresses.
Oh my god.
And everyone's who's this giant pretty woman who can't play guitar?
Yeah, because Jin is huge. He's 6 feet tall, which is very tall.
Especially for a Japanese, for anybody, but especially for a Japanese man.
Especially for a Japanese man at that time period.
Everybody was short 200 years ago.
Everyone was short.
Well, is he actually that tall, or is he just relatively tall and he's actually 5'8"?
No, he's actually 6 feet according to the liner notes.
Damn, that's a big ass dude.
Yeah, he's a tall dude, and his name is taken from one of the 7 virtues of Bushido, which is Jin, which is benevolence. So, which speaks a lot to his character because he's really very much devoted to the art of the sword more than anything else. He doesn't really care about the whole samurai lord relationship or any of that stuff. All he cares about is the sword. And as his journey continues, he loosens up a little bit and learns to care about other people a little bit more. But he's very in tune with this doctrine and these traditions, and he acts in accordance to them in a way that's kind of creepy because he doesn't really have any emotions a lot of the times.
And then how would we say Fu develops?
Fu's interesting because she's annoying from the get-go. It's she's a very annoying 15-year-old girl and just kind of says whatever, and you're not really sure what her deal is for the longest time. Like, it's hilarious. Like, they're almost done with their adventure, and they're like, why are we doing this? What were we even doing? Like, how did we get here? All three of them are interesting to me, because I feel like they're all, like, hiding I don't know, I wouldn't say they're true selves, but they're all sort of putting on, like,
facade.
a show.
None of them are very open people. And
No,
so they're all stuck together with nobody to be like, hey, maybe, like, converse like humans. And they're all just sort of like, I mean, Fu tries eventually, but even she doesn't enjoy, like, spilling beans of any sort.
Yeah, and
if she spills them, she can't eat them.
Yeah, exactly.
And, like, she settles comfortably into this role of, like, flustered woman having to deal with these two dumb guys. Like, she plays that person.
I like to think in the cosmic span of the multiverse, Fu is somehow related to Kirby. Because they're both pink and cute and eat everything with no end in sight.
There we go. All right.
Okay, I was like,
when was Kirby ever, like, a put-upon woman? Was that in the anime? I only watched 3 episodes and then had to die.
Wait, they're both friends. They're both friends with rodents. He has that hamster dude, right?
Rick, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
None of them are. I wouldn't say either of them are really genuine people in this sense, because they're like, it's like there's always like this wall. With Fu, it's this. Oh, I'm gonna be this. I mean, part of it, I think, is the show of her being, like, this bratty, annoying person. Like, I'm sure it comes from a real place at the same time, because she's really young, but just, like, her attitude about things, and how she's always complaining, and how she always has to, like, give them a hard time, and, like, be, like, the annoyed older sister or whatever. And then Mugen with his fucking tood. Like, he's all about his tood, and that's just what he does to get by, and then Jin just doesn't really interact with anybody. So they all have, like, their own different kind of barrier. And it's interesting because, we learn a lot about these characters, but at the same time, even at the very end, you feel like there's so much more to them that we'll never really get to see. Because it's not the kind of show where they reveal, like, absolutely every single thing about what makes this character tick and what their deal is. Like, you learn about their backstories, but...
That's a signature of Watanabe. That was the same thing in Bebop and the same thing in Space Dandy. We never really find out what Space Dandy is, and if we did, it would ruin him.
Basically.
I mean, I feel like with Bebop, there was a little bit more...
They were fleshed out, but you still didn't get, like, the entire picture of who these characters were.
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like we got the most in CHAMPLOO. Like, by the end of it, I had a pretty good roundabout feeling of who everybody was and what all their deals were. Like, they got their basic backgrounds shown in the general.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, like, in anime has a tendency to, like, really beat a dead horse when it comes to explaining characters and what their deal is. A lot of the times, from my experience.
That's true.
And I feel like, this show doesn't really do that. You learn most of who they are by their behavior and these things that they run into, not because they have all these, like, flashbacks and...
It's show don't tell.
Yeah.
And even when they did do like some telling, it was like I'm thinking of the pirate episode where Mugen almost dies, and there's like some flashback as to him. It's done in like a really arty way. That's not like, oh, I'm gonna now regale the entire life. It's the opposite of the Attic of Exposition from Korra season 1.
Yeah,
like that was it done at the worst. Whereas this is it done how you're supposed to.
I feel like that's maybe due to the fact that it's like it's a complete story that they planned out from start to finish, where more serialized things, they're not sure where they can go tonally, so sometimes they have to just be like, all right, here's an entire fucking episode about this character, because I don't know how else we're going to really flesh it out. Where this was more of a slow burn because they were able to be like, okay, we have this many episodes to do it.
Yeah, and the information came up as it was relevant.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't find out who this fucking Sunflower Samurai guy was until, like, the last maybe 4 episodes. Like,
but even then, they did, like, because at first it was like, well, obviously it's somebody important, and then it's like, okay, she lets on a little more, it's somebody she does know them, and then she hates him. She wants to bop him one, and then eventually she just lets out like, yeah, he's my dad.
Yeah, and part of the thing is that like that was the extent to which she knew him. Is that, oh, he's my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't know anything else. Like the whole I mentioned earlier, like the whole thing about the Christian rebellion and persecution that comes up like 6 episodes from the end because it's the extent to which they know about it.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of going on in the background a little bit, but
It comes up multiple times.
Not Christianity specifically, but like a distrust of foreign influence.
Yeah, definitely.
The juxtaposition and the contradiction of like the period's distrust of foreign influence and the huge stylistic influence of Western culture.
It's that whole story trope of like it's that whole period piece trope of like we've picked this era, but it's the tail end of this era, so everyone's like the times are changing and soon there will be no room for people like us. That whole thing, and they do it here, and it's good.
Kind of, but then we also get to see what, like, it would be turning into, and it's not, and obviously Watanabe isn't saying it's a bad thing. It's not like, oh, what has become of Japan? It's
no, totally.
No, like, this is just the way things have to be, and it's wrong.
Yeah.
To just not like other stuff from other people.
Globalization is okay in moderation.
Yep. Or at the very least, like, good can come from it.
Yeah.
It's not 100%
Baseball's really fun, you guys.
Baseball and hip-hop are great. And graffiti.
So great.
I liked the graffiti in that episode way more than any tag I've ever seen.
Yeah, because that was good tags. It wasn't shitty like I have 1 can of spray paint.
I have 1 can of spray paint and like a construction paper stencil that I made.
No, not even. They just fucking freehand that shit.
Here's my shitty tag name in poor handwriting with a single color on an overpass.
I know. I hate it when people tag their shitty tags on top of like nice, colorful, like well done ones, and I'm just like, why did you do that? Like, I know it's like a communication thing,
but like make it cooler tag. The thing is that most tags look like dump.
I know.
I'm not anti-graffiti. I'm anti-dump.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking at all this graffiti and I'm like, why isn't any of this good? Use 2 colors.
At least.
The fight choreography in this show is amazing.
It's amazing. Because, like, by far out of all of Watanabe's shows, this one is the least, like, polished-looking animation-wise. Like, things get kind of chunky and
well, it's that whole like because like everything's moving rapid pace, so there's less frames for the movements because they're so fast. So
yeah, but then
it's that whole anime thing of like animating on 4s for like a limited budget.
Yeah, but then there are some times where like things just look really weird. Because Bebop and Dandy had some action sequences, and they never really like, unless it was done by like a guest artist on Dandy, things never got kind of squiggly and squishy, whereas this show is pretty common for characters to get kind of squiggly and squishy, and Mugen in particular, his face was constantly changing. Like, you couldn't tell if he was ugly or not, depending on who drew him.
It just reminds me of a poorly drawn sumo.
Yeah.
God, that's my favorite thing about this. Anyway.
Yeah, he's referencing a tweet by one of the artists on Clarence who drew like sumo, but all like scratchy and.
They put it in the show like twice now, and I need it more. Jin, I'm gonna be one to kill you.
It is amazing how many times these 2 idiots literally completely die, and like, oh, we're back in the next episode. Fine.
Yeah, Mugen in particular has like seen the border of the afterlife like 3 times.
Yeah. That last episode, I just accepted his death. I was like, okay, he's gonna die. And then he didn't. I was like, okay, alright.
And, like, okay, Jin got stabbed through the tum-tum, through the most powerful samurai, I guess, in the world. He was able to stab the other guy with his his Wakazashi, the littler one, through like the kidney. That guy died instantly. Jin got impaled, somehow found his way down the cliff. Like, and you remember, he was stabbed at the top of the cliff, and then like the next scene is him waking up Mugen at the bottom of the cliff, and Jin's just there. And he lives from that. That was lucky.
I mean, like, I don't know. The show is pretty
It's samurai
lighthearted,
stuff.
ultimately.
That stuff happens all the time in samurai flicks.
Yeah, like, it's just supposed to be cool. Like, it's not like Bebop where, like, the ending is, like, kind of like, oh, man, I forgot that animated characters actually can die. Like, that's actually a real possibility I didn't think about because I'm just so used to them not dying. Like, this show is just, it's having fun with it and just pushing it for the sake of pushing it to create drama and
Action.
yeah, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I've just accepted it as an action trope that the protagonist is unkillable.
And just Mugen just wills himself that he doesn't want to die. Like, he talks to those...
Like, no, fuck you! I don't want to go to bed, Dad!
Yeah, so I guess we could talk about, like, some more cultural things. Because it is kind of interesting, because we have, like, the character of Okuro and then Mugen as these, on the, like, the polar ends, like, geographically of Japan, where, you know, Mugen's all the way on the south, the Ryukyu Islands, which is kind of not considered like Japanese. Like, they have their own ethnic groups and their own culture and religion, which is referenced, you know, a lot with his stuff. Like the song that plays during that montage you were talking about earlier was performed by an Okinawan singer, and whenever he like is about to die, he's like entering what's called the Nirai Kanai, which is the Ryukyuan religion's afterlife, which is fabled to be this island that you can only access by going underwater. And it's like the place where all like the spirits rest, and those like guys in like fuzzy stuff and spears with like the Futuchi, which are essentially like these really ancient ancestors just kind of worshipped collectively into these spirits. So it's like they become like these entities that sort of like usher you in, which I thought was kind of neat. And then Okuro is Ainu, which is why he looked much different, and his clothing was much different from everyone else, which is another native ethnic group from Japan.
From Hokkaido.
From the far north, where it's very cold. Because the people who are we consider Japanese now, or like the main Japanese race, if you want to call it, are the people who like originally migrated from like mainland China, like kind of all at once. It's kind of confusing because, you know, there were different groups of people coming in at different times. So the Ainu and possibly the people from Okinawa and those other islands were like kind of around before the Japanese Empire was like a thing. And so they were imposed a lot. And I thought it was interesting that like juxtaposed with all this stuff of like Japan being afraid of the West and like, you know, hating outside culture, there was also this internal like pushing of their own like minority ethnic groups within it, because I mean, Okuro's story is just heartbreaking, and the Ainu people and like the southern islands have had a lot of like separation from like the main Japanese identity, and have been like persecuted throughout history and stuff. So I just thought it was really neat to see that in an anime, and to see that like side of things.
It kind of highlighted the hypocrisy of it, because like, here's the thing: imperialism is I think unilaterally terrible.
Yeah.
So at the same time that they're trying to resist Western imperialism, there's still their own imperialism taking effects against what should ostensibly be their own people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's such a bummer how universal the thing that happened to Okuro was in imperialistic takeovers.
Yeah, because they just weren't really valued. There were these like outsider people with different traditions and like a different language, and And there are very few Ainu left. Like, there are very, very, very little of them. Like, I noticed that when I first watched the show, because Mugen he looks different from everyone else. And I was like, why does this guy look different and dress differently? Like, I mean, obviously part of it is because he's anachronistic with the hip-hop culture, but, like, when we meet Mokuro and the girl character whose name escapes me, you know, they all have...
no. I'm looking it up.
They all sort of have, like, that unified motif. So, like...
Koza.
And Koza, and, you know, they talk about how, like, shitty their life was because they were in a penal colony. And, like, I was, like, researching the history of the Ryukyu Islands, and, like, it's really crazy and hard to follow because there's, like, so many short shifts in time of, like, who's in charge and what the deal is and who's running things. So, I don't know, I appreciated that. Like, I thought that added a lot of, like, texture to the show that you don't normally see.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think the idea that this show has no substance is completely false. It's just not the focus.
Yeah, no, totally. Any good thing should have substance, but, you know, yeah.
A little bit. But this show definitely has a lot of, like, really stupid fun episodes, and...
I mean, there's one episode where they do a full-on Treehouse of Horror and everybody dies at the end.
Fucking zombie-ass. That's the most pointless one.
Yeah.
That was ridiculous.
Yeah. Apparently, I read that might have been sort of like a jab at, what's his face? One of the guys who made,
Itoi, the Earthbound guy.
The Earthbound guy, because apparently, like, he was obsessed with some ancient treasure and, like, poured millions of dollars into getting it dug up. Yeah.
I tried to find any correlation and haven't been able to find anything with that.
He's buried it. He doesn't want anyone else to get to the treasure.
I mean, apparently in the Japanese media, he's like a punchline because he's like the crazy guy who tries to unearth this ancient treasure.
Weird.
There's a lot of weird, like, in-jokes that you don't even, like, recognize as being in-jokes.
Oh man, Itoi has a dog named Bullion.
That's adorable. It's a cute name for a dog.
He should have puppies and name one of them Bullion Cubed.
Oh.
That's what I think you should do with that dog name.
Apparently, Jin's sword style was a real kenjutsu. Because I'm used to so many of these kenjutsus being fake, so it's like, oh, really? Mujushin, Sword of No Abiding Mind, was an actual esoteric kendo school in the Edo era.
His master was a real person.
Yeah, there's a lot of real people. Like, the artist in the episode with the ukiyo paintings was a real famous artist who really brought attention to that style of painting. He painted the famous Beauty Looking Backwards that you might remember from Animal Crossing. Like, of, like, the lady in the kimono, like, looking behind her, and, like, a bunch of other stuff. And, the Americans in the baseball game are based off of, Alexander Joy Cartwright is the guy who invented baseball, like, who's credited as inventing baseball, and he was one of the, like, admirals in that game.
Yeah, and then there's Abner Doubleday, the guy who's, like, colloquially known as the inventor, but that's a myth.
Yeah. There's a lot of people... I mean, a lot of people that I wouldn't really know because they're, like, Japanese historical figures. Also, I think the samurai who smells of sunflower might have been an actual person who existed.
During the rebellion?
During the Shimabara Rebellion, which was essentially when the underground Christians had an uprising and were, like, completely squashed.
Yeah. One of the few times Christians have actually been persecuted, but they keep milking it.
Well, it's interesting because I don't think a lot of, like, the Christians, like, in the West are aware of that history.
Milking Rome, it was 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
You guys have been fine since then.
Unless you're, like, in Japan, then, a little more recent, but...
Yeah.
Oh! We haven't talked about women in this show yet.
That's something I wanted to point out. Is that one thing I noticed when I was rewatching this is that, like, in the first couple of episodes, Fu's threatened with sexual violence kind of a lot.
Yeah.
And luckily thankfully that wasn't a constant thing until it happened again in the finale. Not a huge fan of that.
I mean, there's a lot of violence in general towards women and a lot of injustice towards women in the show.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of injustice kind of period, but there are some specific female characters with specifically female problems. More than once we run into a character who's, because of
husbands gambling, they sold into sexual slavery.
Yeah, sold into prostitution for the rest of their lives.
That's effectively slavery.
Yeah, which was a common practice. And the fact that Fu wanted to get bodyguards before she went on her journey was actually kind of historically accurate, because at the time, not only was it super dangerous, because, in between towns there wasn't that much people in charge. You had these random bridge killers, like that one guy that was a character in a certain episode. But it was illegal for women to travel alone without being escorted. So, and then of course they were part of that was, I guess, part was protection, because a lot of times you would run into these sort of tricks to get you into the prostitution ring, like what happened to Fu with the pot thing, was a very real kind of thing that happened. And then you had Sarah with her story with her son. So I mean, Watanabe doesn't shy from showing that it was a hard time to be alive. Everyone kept saying technically we're in peace because we're not in the Warring States period anymore. We have the shogunate, but things were pretty wild and crazy, and it wasn't always very safe.
Yeah, it really does seem like the rich fucks are still doing great, and we're in the same goddamn place.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is why, the Meiji Restoration happened and the war happened in the first place against the Tokugawa, because, people were, felt like it wasn't helping anything, and there wasn't any change. And then, of course, after the Meiji era, people felt the same way. It was just the same thing, so...
This is a Who song. This won't get fooled again. Make the new boss same as the old boss. Jesus Christ. It never gets better. It just gets different.
Yeah, it just gets different.
A different kind of the same.
Yeah.
A different kind of the same.
It's a different flavor of shit. The first one was corn, and then this one is baby food.
But it's interesting how the show balances between this kind of shitty world, but also this kind of amazing one at the same time that's fun, and you want to explore it with these characters.
I think it's a world that does have inherent goodness in it. It's just something that has to be worked for.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's realistic. Any place, any setting should have, any setting or historical period has good and bad things about it. Things to appreciate, but also wow, really shitty fucking problems.
Yeah. And it feels like a quarter of the episodes were about prostitutes. I mean, Fu became a prostitute at least once, maybe twice, I don't remember. There was that one episode where Jin pulls a 22 Acacia Avenue with that prostitute.
That was one of my favorite episodes.
That's a really good one.
I really like that episode a lot.
That's an Iron Maiden song if you don't get the reference. The exact same. He falls in love with a prostitute and tries to save her. Which, of course, there's kind of a gross savior complex that runs with that whole trope.
I mean, the context here is a little different because the prostitutes in this era are literally slaves.
Yeah.
Whereas in modern times, they usually go to that job because they need the money.
Yeah.
But there's some choice in the matter, typically. I don't know. But I like that he saved her and then he let her go.
Yeah.
To be in a safe place. Yeah.
He's in the end a good dude about it. Whereas, that episode where Mugen has the prostitute, which turns out to be a ninja, he's like, all right, I saved you, now let me do that thing with your butthole you talked about.
Well, I mean, he was upset because he paid. I mean, he didn't realize that the money was fake. And then she kept saying she was going to do it.
He was like ovulating during that episode. He was super horned up.
I want my nookie!
That was the greatest line in the entire anime. I want my nookie. Quote, hyphen Steve Bloom, whatever year that aired.
Well, it was funny because the whole show he was trying to get nookie and he couldn't, but Jin just kept having it. Like in that same episode, he pleased like 3 women at the same time. He threw his back out having too much sex.
And that was one of 3 episodes in which Fu gets fat for one scene.
Fat Fu is the greatest.
I love fat food. Makes me hungry. Watching the show always makes me hungry.
Because it's also kind of like a culinary adventure. It's like, what do they got in this part of the country? Weird raw beef? Okay. I'll eat all of it. Fuck.
And it's only, like, animation, too. Like, real people eating food, I'm like, whatever, I do it all the time. But, like, animated food looks way better.
Especially
always,
anime
objectively.
food.
Because there's so much, like, love put into how they eat the food.
Like, I was thinking this week, is like, I work at a deli, I'm like, what if somebody animated this? I bet it would look crazy. I've never seen, like, anime food porn of deli meat. Probably because it's not, like, a Japanese thing.
Oh my god, I love when the announcer goes crazy because of Fu's stomach.
Yeah,
this
like,
girl's stomach.
The next stage of human evolution.
He has,
This
like, an
is
existential
a cosmos
crisis.
unto itself.
Yes!
It's connected to the void of the universe.
That's
One
why
has
I
to
said
ask,
she's Kirby.
where have we been? Where are we going?
If she's
Their
Kirby,
forms are like gods unto themselves.
if she's Kirby, I'm gonna say Mugen's DDD and Jin is Meta Knight.
Meta Knight, yep.
Yep.
Anything else we want to talk about this show? Or do you want to get into our big recap thing?
Well, I was just gonna say that my favorite secondary character is Monzo.
Yeah, Monzo's a lot of fun. It's
Monzo's super fun.
great voice
For
on that guy.
Pete's sake!
That guy's got a great voice. Oh, one other thing Monzo reminded me is that actually, when we were talking about Korra and their clip show episode, that was inspired by this show's clip show, and that it was, clips with the characters making commentary over it.
Yes.
I feel like they also were inspired by this show's penultimate episode, which was to get all the ridiculous silliness out of the way so they could get serious. Because Avatar had Ember Island players where they just
Made
pointed
fun
their
of the
own
entire series.
They just pointed their own faces for 22 minutes, whereas this one has the baseball blues, which is an entire ridiculous baseball roid up anime in one episode.
It's my favorite.
I think
it's
the
my
Boondocks also did an episode that was the same thing.
It's my favorite of the dumb episodes.
Yeah, it's so good.
Hands down.
Like, 8
Monzo's...
people die in it.
But yeah, like you had the really heavy 2-parter with Sarah, and then the fucking zombie episode, and the baseball episode, and then the 3-part finale to like give you a breather.
Yeah, they really pulled out all the animation stops in the finales. Those were the best fights, some of the best fights in the series. Like the one with Sarah is also really good.
All the fights, and all the fights are like different too. Like there's I think I read they made like an effort to choreograph each one differently so that it was something fresh each time, and it wasn't just the same crap over and over again.
The opposite of Utna.
And the fact that they were so fast, really added to like this great energy.
Oh yeah, nothing but energy. This every fight in the show just sweeps you up, and you're immediately invested.
They just tear the fucking
scene.
Lever off.
And it's realistic in the way that it's quick, because like traditionally sword battles like they don't last very long. Like
Soul Calibur's bullshit. You get hit once and you're probably dead.
Yeah, like it is fast, but then you have like jumping around and
one of my favorite ones was just the one where Jin kills his master. There's 5 slashes in that whole fight.
That fight was amazing.
Yep.
It's like 2 seconds long.
And that's what it's like.
But I think that's just a testament to how much people actually don't necessarily want like realism in their fiction or media. Like people
want
that.
huge guys smashing into each other for 8 minutes.
But like have it like, because I don't know enough about video games, but I think there's been like several attempts to make like this is like a realistic fighting game, and it's always like I'm immediately dead. This is shit.
Yeah, it's
not a very good idea.
Yeah.
No, I mean you get one hit and you win. Like that's how it works. They kill a lot of people in this show.
Yep. I think my favorite is in the finale when, and I'm pretty sure this was not on purpose, when Mugen wins that sword fight with the dude by, like, he gets his chain wrapped around his sword stuck in the ground, and I forget what exactly happens, but, like, they leg lock somehow, and the thing comes loose and his head just gets sliced off once again. It's just a giant domino effect of shit that I'm 100% convinced Mugen did not mean to do, but he was just like, well, that worked.
No, he was desperate. He was fucking bleeding everywhere.
His arm was broke as fuck. I think that was supposed to be like him thinking more thoughtfully than how he normally fights.
Yeah.
I think that was supposed to be what they were going for thematically there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because because at the end, he thought more thoughtfully with his fighting, and then Jin was a bit more emotional with his. So they kind of, like, went to their opposites and grew a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, Monzo also voices a Guilty Gear.
Which one?
Dr. Paradigm.
Oh my god, that's completely Dr. Paradigm.
Oh my god. Jumping out of a barrel crate in his fundoshi, all sweaty.
A new Guilty Gear is coming out this summer. I'm so excited.
Me too.
We'll talk about this later. Toon Goons, the premier Guilty Gear podcast on the internet.
It's weird, because there's a lot that you can say and a lot that you don't have to say about this show, because so much of it is just the experience of watching it and the ride of going on this journey with them.
It's absolutely a ride.
And
yeah, because the journey itself doesn't get a whole lot of closure due to circumstances outside of their control.
Yeah, and I mean, they accomplish what they set out to do.
Yeah.
And all three of them sort of clean up their past by the end of it.
This show is like, it's one of those stories, I guess it's almost like Fully Cooley in that sense, where it's a very small story taking place in a much bigger world with other shit happening that they're only tentatively connected to. And it fucks up with what they're trying to do.
So many of the final conflicts were kind of established in the three-part finale, like this whole idea of, like, cleaning up the stuff from the Christian rebellion, the name of which I keep forgetting. Like, that was established in the first part of the three-part finale.
Yeah, but, well, I mean, it was hinted at.
But, like, the idea that that's going to be a main driving conflict. Because it's so hard to tell with this super episodic show.
They could have they could have made it more in the foreground. They could have easily put it in the foreground, but they left it in the background to, like, boil over until the finale, which I super dug.
Yeah, because Isaac, the European guy, was like, "Don't show that to anyone."
Yeah.
And we don't really find out what it is. And I mean, and it makes sense because the Christian movement was really underground, so it really wouldn't be something that you would see everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that she ran into that girl was an astounding coincidence, because...
like everything else in the show.
Yeah, everything about this, everything plot-wise hinges on gross coincidences. The fact, like... Just the identity of the
vile coincidences.
Just the identity of the Sunflower Samurai itself is a giant, like, coincidence. Like, oh, okay, he just happens to be this horrendously important criminal person. Okay.
Yeah, he's not just her deadbeat dad.
Yeah, he's not. This isn't Finn's story.
Do we want to use that as a transition?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right.
You're welcome.
It's a wonderful show. It's so fun.
Watch it.
It's on Hulu and Netflix. Whichever one you got.
Subbed or dubbed is great for all tastes.
Mm-hmm. Maybe a little bit of both. Really shampoo it up.
Lather, rinse, and repeat.
Subbed or dubbed, great for all you schlubs.